Okay, here we go. This is 1.1 Basics of Algebra. This is the first real unit for Algebra 2. All right, so let's get started. So what are we going to be doing this week? We are going to be evaluating algebraic expressions, simplifying algebraic expressions, and simplifying with fractions. All right, so some things that we need to remember from Algebra 1 would be our order of operations. So you might have heard or remember, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. I always say GEMDAS because the P here in PEMDAS stands for parentheses, right? But really we need to be doing all or simplifying in all grouping symbols. And so there isn't just parentheses. You might see brackets like that. You might see these little things. I'm really bad at making these. Let's see, you might see a radicand, which is like a square root symbol, and then also like a fraction. So like if you have a fraction, you got a bunch of stuff on top, a bunch of stuff on the bottom, you want to simplify on the top and the bottom first before you do any dividing. Okay, so we're gonna call it GEMDAS in this class. All right. Okay, let's get started. So evaluating. All we have to do here is just substitute out the numbers for the letters and just go. So what do we got? K is equal to -1 plus 6. H is equal to -6 plus -2. I'm going to put that in parentheses because I don't like to put just back-to-back symbols like that. All right, so now we just have to follow GEMDAS, right? We have grouping symbols, so I need to solve inside here first. We have another set of grouping symbols, but really that just means, the grouping symbols, you have to solve inside them. So there's nothing to do with this -2, so we can just move on. So we have -2 plus, or sorry, -6 plus a -2, and that's going to be -8. All right, so now I'm just going to kind of update the problem. We get -1 plus 6, and in parentheses -8. Okay, now just a reminder here, anytime you don't have any symbol in between here, that means multiply. Okay, so this is 6 times 8. All right, so what we have left in this problem is we have adding a -1 or multiplying. Okay, so we have the M is before the A, so we have to do that first. So we have to do 6 times -8 first, and then add that -1. So 6 times the -8, that is going to be -48, and then we're going to add this -1, and our final answer is going to be -49. Okay, so you get that done. I'm going to erase it so I don't confuse me on problem 3 when we get there. All right, number 2. Let's see. So first thing we want to do, I'm going to zoom in a little bit. First thing we want to do is just substitute out the numbers for the letters. So z is equal to 2 minus x is -6 plus y, which is 3. All right, so here we go. GEMDAS would tell us to do grouping symbols first, so let's do that. Let's do -6 plus 3. -6 plus 3 is going to be -3. And don't forget to bring down this power of 3. All right, so now I just did grouping symbols, so now I have to do exponents, and we do have exponents. So this is, so -3 to the third power is -3 times -3 times -3, okay? And if you're going to enter in that into your calculator, which you, for this one you don't really need to, but when you start using powers, you should probably use your calculator. Just remember, if you have a negative, you should use your parentheses keys. That way your calculator recognizes that you're you're squaring, you're cubing, or you're raising that number to the actual power. Because if you don't put it in the parentheses, you could get the wrong answer. All right. So we can just solve this by hand here. We got negative 3 times negative 3, which is positive 9, and positive 9 times negative 3 is negative 27. All right, so I'm going to go, this is kind of over here, so I'm going to just drop down our answer. We had 2 minus negative 27. And so our final answer would be, we're subtracting a negative. So hopefully this is just review for you. So subtracting a negative is the same as adding a positive. So you guys can think about this two ways. Like you can think about this as like distributing a negative 1. And that's how you get the a positive number. But really what I want you guys to get in the habit of just recognizing is that anytime you have a negative to the left of a grouping symbol, what you want to do is just change that sign and change all the signs in between. So if I'm going to change this to positive, I'm going to change this to positive. Okay, so now our final answer is 2 plus 27, which is 29. All right, moving on. Number 3. So first thing we want to do is just substitute out everything. So we get A is negative 6 minus negative 2. Really important that we go slow with these to make sure we don't make a mistake, because we got back-to-back negatives, so we're going to have to do what we just did before in problem 2. And then we have negative C, just 2, and then this is squared. All right, so like I mentioned before, we want to solve everything on the top and on the bottom before we divide, okay? So the first thing we should do is solve the top, all right? So we have a negative to the left of the parentheses, so I just want to change this to positive and change that to positive. Okay, so we got negative 6 plus 2, which is going to be negative 4. And then we have 2 squared, because we're not including that negative. So 2 squared is 4, and then the negative out in front makes that answer negative. So we get negative 4 over negative 4, which is positive 1. All right, moving on, number 4. We've got z minus, so z is 2 minus y, which is negative 14, plus x squared, and x is negative squared, and then let's close that. All right, so the first thing I need to do is the grouping symbols. So we're in here, and then we kind of start over again. So is there more grouping symbols? Well, there is, but we don't need to do anything inside there, so we can move on. Exponents, we do have exponents, so let's do that next. So negative 4 squared is negative 4 times negative 4, which is positive 16. All right, so I'm just going to kind of update this problem over here. We got 2 minus negative 14 plus 16. And then I need to finish inside this grouping symbols. So we get negative 14 plus 16, which is positive 2. So we get 2 minus, in parentheses, 2. All right, and so we get 2 minus 2. There we go. Answer is 0. Okay, moving on, combine like terms. So like terms have to have the same variable, so the same letter, and the letters have to be raised to the same power. Okay, so just as an example, so 4x squared and this x to the power of 1 are not like terms because they are not raised to the same power. Okay, you should know the following words. A term is just one of these, are each their own term. Okay, an expression, this whole thing is an expression. You could have a smaller expression, just like 2x plus 4. That's an expression. A variable is just one of these letters, a letter substituted in for a number. A constant is, so in this example, your 4 is your constant, is your number by itself without a variable. And then your coefficient, the coefficient is the number in front of the variable. So in this problem here, or this expression right here, 2 is the coefficient. 4 is the constant. Okay? All right, moving on. So let's go ahead and combine like terms. So it doesn't look like we have a like term with the 4x squared. We do have y squared and 5y squared. Okay, so these would be like terms because they have the same letter and they are raised to the same power. Okay, so this is really like 1y squared. We don't need to write that 1 because there's only 1 there, right? So 1 plus 5, we get 6y squared. And then we just drop down everything else. I just cancel that out. Best to write this in alphabetical order if you can. This x squared and then y squared. So you would put the x before the y, but it doesn't really matter. But you definitely should write this in terms of like in descending variables. So this is my final answer here. But if I had something x to the third power, I would want to write that first. Okay, if I had an x to the fourth power, I would want to write that before that. Okay, so you want to write that in descending order. So that is the most appropriate way to write that. Okay? All right, moving on. Simplifying. All right, so this is, we just have to basically do the two things that we just did. We're just putting them together. All right, so number 5, we have 5w minus 3w, and then in parentheses 3w plus 6. So what we need to do here first is multiply this negative 3w times 3w. And you might be asking yourself, why are we not adding these? Well, hopefully we recognize that 3w and 6 are not like terms. We cannot add those. Okay. All right, so let's do this. Negative 3w times 3w is going to be negative 3 times positive 3, which is negative 9, and then w times w, which is w squared. All right, and then we do our second distribution, so it's negative 3w times positive 6, which is negative 18w, and then we can just drop down this 5w, and now we just combine like terms. We've got 5w and negative 18w, so our final answer would be negative 9w squared minus 13w. There we go. All right, number 6, we need to just distribute both of these. We got negative 9 times 4 and negative 9 times 3b, so we get negative 36. Negative 9 times 3w is negative 27b, and distribute here, we get negative 3 times negative 7, which is going to be positive 21. Don't forget the b. Then do our second distribution, negative 3 times positive 5, which is negative 15. All right, so we have two sets of like terms. We got our constants here that we can combine and our terms with the b's. Okay, so we can add negative 27b and positive 21b, so it's going to be negative 6b, and then our constants, we got negative 36 minus 15, which is going to be negative 51. Okay, all right, moving on. Whoa. All right. Number 7, we get negative 5r times 3r. That's going to be negative 15. And then r times r is r squared. And then our second distribution, negative 5r plus 2 is negative 10r. Drop down this negative r. And so we can combine these like terms and we get negative 15r squared minus 11r. Okay, because we got negative 10 minus 1, we get negative 11. All right, that's about all I have time for this video. I have a 15-minute max on these videos, so why don't you guys give problems 1 through 12 a shot for today. All right, we'll see you in the next video.